Hello all, we're going to have a good talk today. Tina Marovich, this is for you. It's for First Nations, and it's for Canadians too, to learn a little bit something about how our system works, where we are in this world, and how we relate to our neighbor, the United States of America. So we're going to break down and go over the American Indian versus First Nations right here in Canada. Canadians, Americans know this very well. They're a much older country, much older territory and institution. They developed very much differently, and we know with the African American, the struggles with those civil rights. We also know about the war against the American Indian, fought by Spanish, British, and French. And I mean war, to the point that the Americans fought that war to get out, and they went forward from there. The American Indian, which overlaps absolutely the First Nations of Canada. You can look at the historical maps. I had to do this work for Alberta independence. I had to know what laws, not only in treaty with our biggest trading partner, but absolutely international law. That's what actually brought me to all of this knowledge. You either learn it or you're not going to do very well for an independence party looking to separate from Canada of the time. Now I've changed direction. I'm incorporating all of Canada. We're going to try and fix Canada. But let's talk about what is and what isn't, what's real and what's not. And it is important for First Nations. I'm going to start with, there's some bad news today, but we're going to start with the Supreme Court ruling today on the extinct nation in BC, the American Indian who went to go hunt in British Columbia, where his ancestors absolutely, from his tribe, hunted and fished for many millennia. That's a fact. However, for British Columbia, the unceded land and all that territory, when you look at the map of BC, much, much different than Alberta, Saskatchewan, and parts of Manitoba, upwards of Northwest Territory and parts of Yukon, northern BC. There's a whole pile of unceded land in British Columbia. The name says it all right there. British Columbia. Coastal. Now, the American Indian, even though they went to war, things didn't go on the coast quite so the same way as the British had such powers against the First Nations in British Columbia. It's just because of that 49th parallel. The American Indians of the same overlap into Canada, USA, during time of absolute Britain. We're talking France, Britain. Canada's not even a country, okay? Not even a country. It's British territory. War of Independence. We're going back to the 1700s. We're looking at the Jay Treaty. The Jay Treaty, which allowed between the British Empire and the United States of America for what is our First Nations here in Canada and the American Indian to absolutely, even to this day, go across to each border and each territory. We know there's a tremendous amount of crown land in Canada. Not so in the United States of America. We know Richard Nixon settled out the American Indian. They have a tremendous amount of land. And when we get into BC, Saskatchewan border, when you start to go down, you see the massive settlement for the American Indian. Treaty 7, this is just for my province, and that overlaps into BC. And then there's the extinction where there's nothing, because the British drove them out, wiped out those First Nations, chased them into my province, Alberta. It's sad, it's the story, but the tribe in Washington, you go down south, they're still alive and well today. They've been going up and down for many, many years. They hunt, fish, trap, do all that stuff. And did you all know, now I don't know if First Nations know this, I'm sure some chiefs do, I'm fairly absolutely certain that Treaty 7, more than is fully aware of this in Alberta. I don't know the status of British Columbia. I haven't looked into that detail. But they go back and forth. There's never been an issue. They trade, they hunt, fish, they do all that. Nobody would ever make an issue of it. But an American Indian came up to his ancestral lands, not really an issue except for BC starts developing. He got caught hunting. They said, sorry, you have no status. It went to court. They battled with him. However, Americans came forward. Our Supreme Court had to look at what are the laws of those real people, what were the agreements with Britain and the United States of America. Are you guys all ready for this? Almost 100 years before Canada even became a country. That's the claim that this individual has. You extinct my people in British Columbia, but we're not extinct in Washington, D.C. America made an agreement, the United States of America made an agreement that American Indians can hunt and fish through these territories. Through the Jay Treaty, they can travel to and from Canada. No passports, nothing. Nothing. Treaty 7 for sure in Alberta. I can guarantee this for a fact. Enjoys this. American Indians enjoy that. And nobody's ever had an issue. It's never been an issue. That's the law of the United States. Our Supreme Court got a royal education from a P5 member of the United States of America. That is why the Supreme Court had to rule, or you're going to be going against the United States of America. Believe it or not, the American Indian enjoys 500 times more than the absolute First Nation. When I say that, people of treaty or people of historical First Nation status, meaning that 100% blood, whether they've been thinned down through intermarriage and all of that as years go by. But those with those roots, that's the story. That's reality. You can look it up. Jay Treaty, hunting, fishing rights of the American Indian. And the Jay Treaty through Canada to the United States of America. Almost 100 years older than the country we call Canada. 100 years older, regardless of the atrocities committed in Canada, whether that was by a colonial power or latter. That's the truth. That's the truth. So I hope that helps everybody, First Nations too. That's where your settlement comes from. You can thank the United States of America for that. And, well, obviously the legal team that brought all that forward. The second thing we're going to get into is bad news. Really, really bad news. The National Chief, Perry Bellegarde, he decided UNDRIP's the way to go, C-15, regardless of all the First Nation chiefs across Canada, regardless of how reserves feel about it. A non-binding agreement. They call it UN UNDRIP, United Nations for Indigenous Persons, right? Unfortunately, it's a non-binding agreement, meaning it's not to be pursued as international law, but countries who sign now have the absolute authority, each local government, which is i.e. Canada, to administer that any way they like. First Nations are crying out. I've already seen APTN News. Again, thank you. Thank you, Tina. Thank you very much. I went into that too. We both saw our comments. I saw all the First Nations commenting. It's a beautiful thing. There's so many woke First Nations persons. It's going to be Canada drip, which is really bad because it ignores the treaties in translation and giving that crown power who is guilty of genocide, who continues to be a genocidal power against the First Nations. What is that going to mean for the First Nations and Canadian citizens? It's bad news. They're going to use First Nations to block Canadian citizens Well, absolutely giving it all away to foreign interests. It's sad. I'm very disappointed. I guess I won't be contacting Perry in that regard. I guess that's that. It's a terrible, terrible way to finish off my Friday night. I'm upset about it. It's a negative for sure. I will get into more of it as we go. I may still try to talk to Perry, but I just know from Alberta and the First Nations of Alberta, not on board, not a unanimous at all. And I see the comments on APTN. So if the First Nations aren't on board, why would you be going with it? Well, some First Nations say because Perry believes he's going to get appointed senator down the road, which is very likely possible. The crown power bestowed on ultimately the prime minister. Scary stuff, right? Scary, scary stuff. In the United States of America, we look at the African American story, and in the slave times, the term of the house Negro, I'm not going to say it, I'm a white guy, you know what'll happen if I go through it. The term house Negro, the high-end, rat on all, the field slaves, absolutely loves the master. That comes to mind here. Just saying. Sorry to say that, but African Americans can understand what that is, and maybe for First Nations, have a look at that. That's what we're looking at here. Absolutely with corrupt government. So it's discouraging. It's discouraging for all Canadians, and it's absolutely discouraging for First Nations. It's going to be even much, much harder to fight the crown now. But I'm not going to give up, because I believe in all the chiefs and I believe in all the First Nations people, just as I believe in all Canadians. And I think we can all get past this. It's another kick in the pants. It's another knockdown. Last thing I want to get into is Renata Ford. People looking at my posts, some people commenting, oh, she's Richie Rich. This is all I'm going to say about Renata Ford. Okay, I've seen all her posts, very religious, all the way up and after Christmas. She went dead silent, obviously this case. This is what I can tell all of you about Renata Ford. Married to Rob Ford, mayor. Great salary, they have a life. He had some troubles. Her life was greatly impacted. Doug Ford's mother says she has addictions issues. Yes, she got impaired a number of years ago. Her husband died. Doug Ford's executor of the state. 2 years after he died, Renata never saw a dollar. Nothing. That's fact. You can look, 2018, the reports, not a dollar. Going 2016, it's 2021, 5 years later. We know as of October 2020, she never got a dollar. All I'm going to say to all of you who say Richie Rich, his estate was forecasted at $985,000. Who knows? We don't know what line of credits were outstanding. We don't know the status of his business with those two brothers. All we know is that business obviously went down the toilet. Doug Ford's executor, we have a wife, we have 2 children. Sounds like a lot of money, right? What about all of the bills outstanding? We don't know what those are. Renata went with 2 children, lost the income from Rob Ford. He had an insurance policy, life insurance. None of that materialized for 2 years with Doug Ford as executor. Now, I don't know about all of you, but when you have assets like that, you have utilities, bills, probably lines of credit, credit cards, who knows what Doug left her, and Renata's got to carry that, and the income's gone. People, we're not talking wealthy. Just when you say, oh, look, at one time in my life, I was worth $250,000, at a $500,000 asset. I was set to retire at 54. I know lots of people, man or woman. I even spent a year and a half of my life helping people who get into bad divorces or in Renata's case, a bad widowing, or, you're left with children, you don't know where to turn, nobody's there for you, and the wolves of Wall Street, I like to call it, are all around you. Lawyers get into you. And this business, and Renata was locked out. As of 2020, 4 years after his death, she was locked out of all the money. Yes, there's a history there of remortgaging everything else, remortgaging to pay bills, 8.5% interest rate on $700,000. We don't know the status or the details. We don't know lines of credit. Rich is only a view that people look at as they see. They don't know the background financing. They don't know where the family's at. We know there were drugs involved with Rob. We know Renata had somewhat of a breakdown. We know she got impaired. There's never been drug issues for Renata. It's one family versus one widowed woman with 2 children. Go without any kind of money or support for 4 years, carrying the weight of assets and an estate like that when the executor doesn't settle it out. And they happen to be Premier of Ontario with tremendous power. I don't know everybody. I'm not going to say one way or another, but Richie Rich, I don't think so. That's my video today. I hope it helps a lot of people out. I hope it gets the wheels turning in people's minds, because any time in life we never know what people are going through. Never throw the stone. I really believe that, unless you're free of all sin, or you haven't perpetrated, but everybody has at some point, in some way, committed some sin against somebody else. We just don't know. And to judge a book by a cover of a family with that much power and a widow, I don't think so. Look at the history. That's just my opinion anyway. We don't really know. Thanks, everybody. Share the video. Get it out there. I'm very tired. I had a great last night. Can't get into it. Gonna have a great weekend. Lots of events. I'm gonna take this day to sleep and rest, recharge the batteries, and I'll look forward to seeing you all this weekend. Bye now.